video. If my voice breaks, let me know. I'll turn the video off. So let's begin today's class. Back and neck straight. Just close your eyes. Very gently close the eyes and start watching the breath. Observe the natural flow of the breath. And begin to keep your mind with the breath and disconnect from all thoughts, emotions, everything external to you, and start going within. And as you begin to calm down your mind and body, slowly begin to elongate your breath, going for long, slow, and deep breath. And specifically, make sure that your neck and shoulders are relaxed. And when you feel ready, you can begin to add Kumbha. Retain your breath for 2 seconds after you inhale. Then you can go for the exhalation. We'll be chanting Om 3 times, followed by 3 Shanti. Exhale completely, and then begin to inhale for Om. Shanti. 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 Just relax and feel the vibration. Join both your palms together in front of the chest and rub them together. Place them over the eyes. And very slowly, while blinking and looking at your palm, open up your eyes, come back to the smile. And namaste to everyone. Let us begin today's session. Okay, so yesterday we talked about Bhakti Yoga and we discussed that emotion was the main basis of Bhakti Yoga. Before that, we discussed Karma Yoga and action was the main basis of that practice, like that school of yoga. Today, we're going to go into Gyan Yoga. So, before stepping into what Gyan Yoga is, it's very important to understand that going for Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is much easier than going for the practice of Gyan Yoga. Okay? Most of us cannot go into the practice of Gyan Yoga because when we discuss the meaning also, we will understand what Gyan means when we are talking of Gyan Yoga. So generally, a very high level of understanding is there in a Gyan Yoga, like from the beginning. So because their previous karmas are very good, so they are born with that innate understanding, and that thing pushes them on the path of Gyan Yoga. So for us, we can try to go on the path of Gyan Yoga, but that information, that knowledge will not seep in. So Gyan Yoga is much harder than the other two practices that we have discussed so far. A person who wants to go for Bhakti Yoga can at least start with the basic rites and rituals and then move ahead into the deeper practice. Same for a Karma Yogi. Slowly, slowly they can change the intention for each and every action and then see a great result in their day-to-day life, like when it will flow in all actions. Okay. But for a Gyan Yogi, when the Guru is telling you something, you need to have that understanding and then process that thing. So if I'm like not over there, if my mind is not that developed, I won't even understand what the Guru is trying to say. Okay. So, and it is a path where you are exposed to a lot of harsh truths. So one thing is your mind should be very developed to understand what is being told to you. Second thing, that a lot of people try to walk on this path, but because the realities are so harsh, we are not ready for that. So people are not able to stick on this path. Okay. So it it is advisable to start with the other two. See which one you follow. Okay. So when we talk of Gyan Yoga, let me write this down. Path of wisdom. Now, if you read a lot of books, you will find it's written path of knowledge also. But when this is written, understand that what they mean is actually wisdom. So knowledge would be that okay, I'm reading a book, I have that book, and I'm acquiring some knowledge. But it converts into wisdom when I'm actually able to incorporate that same thing in my life and see the result that that particular habit, action, behavior, attitude is having on my life. Okay. So even when you read knowledge, it's actually the wisdom you derive out of that knowledge. So implementation and intuitive understanding is the main key of Gyan Yoga. So it's not just acquiring the knowledge, but it's the intuitive understanding. Now, what's the difference between the two? So it's a very simple example. We can take a very simple example. So like I keep telling you that, okay, go have maybe kheer. Okay, kheer is an Indian sweet dish that we have, and it's a very holistic dish, I would say. It has rice, milk, everything. So we make that. It's white in color. Yes, so dry fruits, everything. So one person, if I just tell you that, okay, kheer is white, kheer is sweet, kheer has rice, milk. I'm telling you all of these things. So I'm giving you a lot of information about what the dish, how the dish looks, and I can also tell you how we cook it. We take a lot of time, let the milk boil, and it takes a long amount of time. Then you add this, then you add this. I can give you the entire recipe of the sweet dish. I can give you a good description, but you will actually understand the taste of kheer only when you eat it. Okay, and that is when you will know how it is different from all other sweets that you have had so far. Unless and until I'm just explaining it to you, ऐसा होता है, this is what happens, this is what happens, and this is how it tastes, and then it this gives me an amazing feeling, it melts in my mouth, all of this, you can imagine all of those things. Okay, this is what is happening, this is what is happening, this is how it might taste. So you will draw from your own experience. Okay, you've had something else which is sweet, and you will draw from that experience and you'll be like, ah, that is how it will taste. But you will never really know what the taste of kheer is unless and until you taste it. The same is with Gyan Yoga. Okay, so it's not merely the knowledge, it is actually experiencing that truth and reality. And most of us are not born, a Gyan Yogi is generally born with that characteristic, that he is able to acquire that knowledge. Yes, and then see, like if I tell you some truth, if I tell you some truth and a Gyan Yogi some truth, the Gyan Yogi will actually experience that thing and make a change, implement that thing, would have a very deep understanding of that. For example, most of us have heard that suffering is the only truth. Siddharth Gautam also said this. So even when I hear it, yes, it sounds like, yes, it is true. But for us, like we will listen to this thing, yeah, we will listen to a lot of discourses, and once we step out of that discourse, once we come out of that environment or situation where we listen to that truth, we are going to, for a while, we will try to incorporate that thing, but after a while what will happen is we'll fall back into our old patterns. But this does not happen with the Gyan Yoga. Okay, so that is the level of depth till which he is able to understand the words that are been that have been spoken to him. Okay, so as per the school Gyan, the word Gyan, Jnana, literally means wisdom. Okay, and in the school of Gyan Yoga, there are certain points. So first thing, the main cause of suffering is ignorance. They call it avidya or agyan. Okay, I'll just write this down also. So this is your main cause of suffering. This is what the school believes. That if I am able to remove all of the ignorance from my being, I will actually be able to understand who I really am. And when I get that understanding who I really am, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, when I experience this truth, this knowledge, then what will happen is I will be able to make myself free from all the sufferings. So the concept of Maya also exists in this. Maya or illusion. So for a Gyan Yogi, like he understands that everything around him is Maya. Okay, it's an illusion. Everything you see outside is an illusion, and that thing, this illusion has a grip on us. Okay, so all the external objects, all the external things, they have, in fact, even the belief that I am my body, my thoughts, all of these things have a grip on me, okay, which prevent me from experiencing my highest reality, which is the existence of the soul. So they call it Atman, Atma. We also say Atma. So I'll just spell Maya also. Okay, I haven't even spelled Avidya. No? So Avidya is Avidya. Okay. Then we talked of illusion or Maya. So that is Maya. And then now we have come to the consciousness, which is the only reality. So that is Atman. Okay. So the Gyan Yogi is actually able to understand everything around him is an illusion, and that Atma or his pure consciousness is the only reality. And it is a very subtle reality, so it cannot be perceived through the eye. So it is something which will be perceived through going within, meditating, and once you are able to go in a deep state of meditation, that is when you experience the existence of this pure consciousness inside of you. Okay. His main aim, a Gyan Yogi's main aim, is to try to understand everything around him, the world around him, why certain things exist, why are there certain realities which we experience. All of these things he is trying to understand, and his own nature also. Okay. So the pure consciousness, so Atman, he's trying to understand that, and he's also trying to understand the Jagat, so the world around him. Jeev is the individual consciousness. So Jeev, I will just write that down. We also call it Jeev, Jiv, the individual consciousness. So Jeev and Jagat, he's trying to understand that. And then also he's trying to understand the ultimate reality. Okay. And how does he do this? Through the development of Vivek. Okay. So main two main things. Suffering, cause of suffering is avidya, and what does a Gyan Yogi do? He develops Vivek. So Vivek or discrimination. Vivek. So he is trying to work on the development of Vivek, which he understands will help him to distinguish what is real, what is unreal, what is right, what is wrong, what is temporary, what is permanent. Okay, so main thing is we are stuck in the temporary and we're trying to derive happiness out of the temporary. So he's trying to finish that thing and reach the source of permanent happiness or bliss. I would say we use the term bliss for this. Okay, so it's not temporary, it is eternal and it is permanent. Okay, so any doubts so far on this? No?
Ma'am, you said like he discriminates between right and the wrong, but he is already above the mind. So the right and wrong, when right and wrong comes, mind is in between. When he's already above the mind, then there is no right and wrong.
He is not above the mind, his mind is developed to attain that information. Okay. So we also know what is right and wrong. If I tell you that, okay, every day wake up at 6 in the morning or 4 in the morning and do meditation, we know that, we have that information. But he is capable of implementing that information. So he uses the mind. When a Gyan Yogi, like main strength of the Gyan Yogi is his mind only. He is using the mind, but he's using his mind is being used in a manner where he's actually able to absorb what is being told to him and implement that. So that understanding he gave, it's intuitive understanding, but mind का role finish नहीं होगा इससे.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so uh, so there are certain sources that a Gyan Yogi can uh, use or have with him to start his journey. So the Vedas and the Upanishads are considered to be one of the main sources to which a Gyan Yogi goes to try to understand the spiritual nature of his being. Okay, so they form the basis of, for in the school of Gyan Yoga, these texts form the foundation. Okay, so yeah, Vedas and Upanishads. You can see that in the chat box also. Vedas, Vedas. Upanishads are Upanishads. Okay. So let me list down the path of a Gyan Yogi. Okay, so there are certain pillars. There are considered to be four pillars, okay, that a Gyan Yogi develops, and then there are three core practices. So these pillars form the foundation or basis, okay. Where once the Gyan Yogi is developed in all of these, then he can move ahead into the core practices of Gyan Yoga, in which he goes really deep in the understanding of what is being told to him. Okay, so there are four pillars of knowledge. These are called sadhana chatushaya. Sadhana So sadhana is Sadhana. Chatushthaya Chatushthaya. Sadhana Chatushthaya. Okay, so first one we have Vivek itself. Discrimination. Okay, so once you start on the path of Gyan, first thing that you have to start working on is Vivek, your ability to understand what is real, what is unreal, okay, what is temporary, what is permanent, what is an illusion, what is not an illusion. This understanding is something you start working on from the very beginning of Gyan. Okay, so first Gyan Yogi uses the scriptures to understand this information and develop his own power to discriminate between things. Okay, then he moves to the next step. So he is working on all of these together also, and step by step also. So all of them have been given in a particular order, and then they also intertwine. So it's not necessary that first I will, like, when I start working on Vivek, then the second thing in itself will start developing. So Vairagya or detachment. Now, as soon as the Gyan Yogi, he's already at that stage where his, understanding is very developed. So when he starts working on that, so he has a quality, yes, and then he starts working on that. So when he begins to develop his Vivek, the second thing in itself starts coming very naturally, which is Vairagya. So all of us also have a tinge of Gyan Yoga within us, like, because all of these paths merge somewhere. So Karma Yogi, Bhakti Yoga, when you go into that, then also you will develop a little bit of Gyan Yoga. So after the yoga classes, after these 28, 30 days of your classes, you will also see that there is certain information that you must have acquired during these days in your various classes, and that somehow, without you realizing it, that somehow seeped in. And now maybe earlier you used to get angry at certain things, and now you're just like, okay, so for one or two instances, maybe your awareness by default goes on your breath, and you are somehow just able to, even if your awareness doesn't go on your breath, somehow you become aware of what is going on, and you understand how temporary that is. Somewhere it comes from within. Nobody can explain this. And then you just don't react. And somebody who has known you for years will look at you and they will be like, whoa, you did not react on this thing. And you're just like, yes, naturally only that did not come to me. Yes, naturally only I did not react on that thing, because somewhere this information that you are acquiring in your classes, everyday classes, is seeping inside and changing your subconscious mind, changing your day to day patterns of being or dealing with situations. Okay, so but we don't have that level of potential. So, for example, I will tell you. So, this is one example where you will start changing certain things. Let me take the example of Siddharth Gautam. When he had four instances, as the story goes, and in those four instances only, when he saw certain things that were going on in life, the reality that, like, the understanding that he gained out of those things was so deep that he left everything. He was a prince, and ironically, or I don't know if irony is the right word for this, but when he was born, uh, his father consulted some priest, and the priest told his father that either your son will become a very uh, like good prince, or your son will become a yogi. Okay, so he'll renounce everything and become a yogi. So when his father heard this, his father naturally did what? He cut him off from everything and he gave him all the pleasures of life. So he had everything, and like when he was growing up, and he had a lot of, like, wealth, beautiful women around him. So he experienced all of that. Why? Because his father made an extra effort to push him towards becoming a good prince. And ultimately what happened was, one day when he left his house and he went outside, then he saw like disease, people dying. So that thing really, like, see the contrast. His whole life he had lived in his palace with luxuries, and the moment he stepped out, he saw all of these things. The realization was so strong. He just had, I think, four instances he had overall, and the realization was so deep that he left everything. Like, he got married to such a young and pretty uh, uh, princess, and he had his own child, and after that he left everything. So you can understand the depth of realization he would have had, because his son was also very small when he left his home. So the level of understanding, the level of realization he must have had, that is a very bold thing to do. So that is the level I'm talking of when I'm talking of a Gyan Yogi. Like, that is the level till which he goes. So detachment starts coming in. So he got so detached, like he loved them, but there was so much detachment. He saw suffering and he was just like, let me go and find out what I can do about this. Okay. So the level of detachment was so high that he left everything. Like, being on the top of the world, he came to a place where he, like, didn't even wear those clothes anymore. He was in simple clothing. Like, whenever you see a painting or a picture of Siddharth Gautam sitting as Buddha, you will see he is in very simple clothing. So this is the push that a Gyan Yogi gets. So then Vairagya develops. Okay. Once the Vairagya starts developing, then you go to the third stage, which is called Shat Sampat, or you work on six specific virtues. You develop all of these. Little by little, you add more to these virtues in your day to day life, so that you can uh, make such a stable foundation. Out now, you're making yourself mentally strong also when you're doing all of these things. So it's called Shat Sampat. Shat Sampat are six virtues. Okay, so first one is Sham. Okay, so Shama, Sham also some people call this. Okay, controlling the mind. First, we will work on controlling the mind. So I'll write all six of them down. Then we have Uparti. Okay. After Uparti, we have Titiksha. Tolerance. Shraddha. Faith. Samadhan or okay. So first we have, this is also spelled as S-A-M-A, S-H-A-M-A, different spellings you will find. So Sama, Shama, both of them, like I've heard both pronunciations for this one. Okay. Then Dhamma, which is controlling the senses. So step by step, first we're controlling the mind. Okay, once we attain control over the mind, when we are developing this virtue of controlling the mind, we're not allowing it to just run around anywhere. Okay, we're giving it some direction. Now we are reading the Vedas, the Upanishads. We are giving it direction. We're not giving it the freedom to just go do anything, read anything. So the feeding, like the mental food that we are giving, we are changing that, which leads to controlling the mind. Okay, so you're constantly working on this. Then once your mind is controlled, once you are developing this virtue, then you automatically jump to the next virtue, which is controlling your senses. Okay, so the mind is stable and calm, then you also must have experienced this in your day-to-day life. You are able to control the senses also. So let me take an example over here. So on a day when you have low willpower, yes, your mind is not with you, or you are very stressed, you are in a lot of tension that day, maybe maintaining a very good diet is hard for people. Yeah, so it happens, people do stress eating. So why? Because at that point of time there is no control over the mind. So you eat, you are satisfying one of your sense to deal with that emotion. Okay, and that same thing, if it happens with someone else who has developed some mental control or is able to manage their stress, that person will not eat that junk food despite it being in front of that person. Yes, sometimes it happens that we go outside, maybe you just left non-vegetarian, suppose. Okay, and you meet a few friends and they order non-vegetarian. I feel like eating that a lot, but you are not eating that. Why? Because your mind is very strong. You have set your mind to that task, that no, I'm not going to eat this. So both things happen. If your mind is controlled, then you will see you have a better control over your senses. So then you start controlling your senses once you start working on the mind. Okay, so you reach the second stage, Dhamma. Okay, then once you are working on controlling the senses, now I have control over my senses. So I know that external thing is not going to satisfy me. So what I will do is Once I gain control over the senses, I'm going to not allow them to run out. I'm going to do what? I'm going to withdraw them. Hmm? Now my control is there. They are listening to me. Yes. So I'm going to do what? Not let them go out, not let myself drain my own energy. I will withdraw them in and put that energy in my inward journey. Okay. So Uparti comes in over there. Okay. Then we have Titiksha. So a person who is on the path of Gyan Yoga should also develop a high level of tolerance. Why? Because they will not face favorable conditions always. Yes. So when they work on their virtue of developing tolerance, they are preparing themselves for going into deeper meditation, deeper sadhana. Why? Because again, they will be faced with a lot of truths also. So one thing is that externally something is not taking place in my favor and I need to show tolerance towards that. The other thing is that when my guru is telling me, okay, this is truth, this is not truth, then my level of tolerance of handling that, I am working on developing that each and every day. Okay, so I'm developing this virtue. It is a virtue. Yes. And we read this word, okay, tolerance. No, 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 no. But this is actually a virtue. Titiksha is a virtue that a Gyan Yogi develops, which then leads to the next point, which is Shraddha. Okay. So it contributes to your Shraddha also. Like I said, that, sometimes what happens is the truth is told and you are not in sync with that truth. Okay. So your Shraddha will go down. Suppose your guru tells you something and you're not at that level of experience. So you will start doubting your guru. Why is he saying this or what is he saying? So वहाँ पे your tolerance, your ability to handle that and at the same time maintain your faith comes in. So maintaining the faith in your practice. Okay, if my guru is telling me something, maybe if I follow this practice, I will reach here, and the guru also. So the guru is of utmost importance over here. If you lose faith in your guru and your practice, both these things, you won't be able to walk on the path of Gyan. Yes. So you need to keep that faith within you that you will find what you are looking for eventually. If you keep working towards your goal. Okay. Which again will push you towards your last point. This is called samadhan or one pointed focus. After you have faith in your practice, you have control over your senses, you have developed your tolerance, then you can finally work towards uh, directing your mental energy towards one point of focus, which will lead you on your further development, on your, I would say, help you to develop a mind for meditation. Okay, so your mind will automatically become focused. This is not something you will force. Once these virtues develop, in itself, the last virtue of your mind being focused on just one thing, what? Finding the reality. That becomes your point of focus and you just work towards it. Then nothing else will matter. Okay. So these are the six virtues that you work on. So first pillar is Vivek, second is Vairagya, and third is Shat Sampat. The fourth one, Mumukshutva. Okay. Then naturally an intense desire for liberation will rise within you. Okay. So once you start developing all of these things, so people generally are just like, okay, it's a journey of being desire free. How can I have, or isn't the desire of being liberated in itself a desire? So this question comes up a lot. That isn't that also a desire? So, how do you go about it? Then you'll get stuck in the cycle of desires again. But no, having this desire is so important for you to take your practice more seriously. Why? Because okay, right now you're working with some intention in your mind. But when this desire comes in naturally, there is no other, I would say, motivation that you need. Okay, so once you start working on all of these virtues, in itself, very naturally, this feeling will come from within that now I want to be free from all symptoms. Now I cannot take this. Now I understand that being a bhogi is also not enough for me. So first you will become a bhogi. Yes, so first we become a bhogi. Then we go to the yogi stage. So this is that transition that is taking place from bhogi to yogi when this intense desire rises in your from within, in your heart, in your mind. And this is one thing which will like just lead you to that point where there is no turning back. Okay, so that is the intensity with which one feels this desire, that there is no turning back. After that they will only walk further on their path of gyan yoga. Okay, or other practices of yoga, but for a gyan yogi, like this is the term that is given, and he will of course move ahead on the towards the three core practices of gyan. Okay, the three core practices we will discuss tomorrow. Yes. So, any doubts in any of what we have discussed today?
Clear.
Not clear? Okay. There is a book by Swami Vivekanand. He has written books on all four schools of yoga. So, you guys can go ahead and take a look at those books. He has explained in detail about each and every school of yoga. But let me warn you before any of this, the depth with which he has written. You can read the book, but I think it will take you a lot of time to process the books in general. Like so,
Uh, Name of the book?
it's like you can just search Swami Vivekanand, and this his like books will come up like on schools of yoga. So one book is Raj Yoga. The name of the book in itself is the name of the school of yoga. So I'll just write his name down.
Okay.
Okay. And these are very like you'll get them for 30-40 rupees each book. So uh, yeah,
Okay.
you can easily buy them, find them wherever you're looking, like online. So they are not expensive at all. 30-40 rupees for one book on each school of you. You can go ahead, get hold of these and read them. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, you can definitely note them down during the day and ask them
Yes,
in the next class. Yes, if you
yes,
feel that you have some doubts. And so let's end today's session then. So, yeah. Okay. Um, I'll just answer that. Okay. Just wait. Let's just end the session first. So, back neck straight. Gently close your eyes and start watching your breath. And we'll be chanting Om one time, followed by three sharpies. Exhale completely and then begin to inhale for Om. Shanti. 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 Join both your palms together in front of the chest and rub both the palms together. Place them over the eyes. And very slowly, when blinking and looking at your palms, open up your eyes, come back to the smile. And namaste to everyone. I will see all of you in the evening for the pranayam class.
I need to ask
Thank you.
one thing.
Thank you.
For this week, whole week, we are not having asana class. Like, is there any issue or the same network problem only?
Okay, yeah, I was actually going to ask you this because yesterday I heard that you guys did not have asana class. So yesterday,
Not even yesterday, but whole week, I think. Like
which one
from
are you not having? 2 to 3 or 6 to 7?
say both, I
Both.
suppose. Yeah.
Okay, so let me check in with your tutors because this yesterday also like in pranayam class connection was little bit unstable. So we can at least switch off our videos, but for them you watch them. So let me check with the teachers and then I'll let you know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Anuradha ji.
Thank you.
Yeah. So should I address your doubt here or should like
Yeah, ma'am, whichever way you feel comfortable, like I'm
okay, I'll just address here only then. Yeah.
okay,
So
okay.
during menstruation, there are certain practices that you can do and certain that you cannot do. Okay. So mostly asana practice don't go for that. There are only a few specific asanas that you can do, and then you can do subtle body, very sukshma kriya bolte hain usko. So small body movements like if I'm working on my wrist joint, this my neck joint, yeah, shoulders, all of these things. So this you can do. Nothing that will strain your stomach or your back should be done. Okay. And in pranayam, like mostly I'll answer pranayam. Asana, you can ask your asana teachers also. In pranayam, I would say you can do anulom vilom. It's very good. Don't hold your breath. You can go for abdominal breathing. That is also advisable during that time. And don't go for any like excessive heat producing excessive cold like pranayam. Just go for normal practices only, like balancing. Anulom vilom is balancing. Abdominal breathing is very good. So you can go ahead to these. You can do Brahmari also. Brahmari pranayam is one pranayam which is very, very good when you are like on your menstrual cycle. So ये आप कर सकते हो. Easy.
Okay, right. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.